Hello, this is Mrs. Kohler. I know you're sad, but I don't have my pen along to give you a smiley face today. But today we're going to talk about cancer. So the first thing we need to talk about real quickly is a special stage of the cell cycle where some cells go into interphase and stay there for really long periods of time. Some even stay there their entire lives, like nerve cells. So cells sort of have a timer, like the cell cycle's like a calendar, that tells them when they're allowed to divide. And when they go into this really long period when they don't divide, this is called G0. Interphase is divided into G1, S, and G2. Well, when it goes into G0, it's basically G1 for a really long period of time. The DNA never replicates and the cell never divides. So the cells do what they're supposed to do. This is what blood cells do, but they don't divide again. Blood cells are the same way. When a blood cell's created, it doesn't divide. It stays in G0. So nerve cells. And this is why it's really important as you're a teenager that you be very careful about using drugs and alcohol, because right now you're going through the final period of your life when your body can produce nerve and brain cells. And if they get damaged now, you're not going to be able to replace them later, because by the time you're about 21 or 22, you're not going to produce any neurons anymore. And anything that gets damaged now, you're never going to be able to replace. So you need to be very careful to take care of those cells that you have. Now, the reason that I'm including G0 in here is a lot of times cancer occurs when a cell is supposed to be in this period where it doesn't divide, but it divides anyway. So let's talk about what cancer is. Cancer is a disease when the cell divides when it's not supposed to, either because the DNA is damaged or because it's just not that time yet. And usually it divides when it's not time yet because of damage to the DNA. So the cell continues replicating even though it's not supposed to. Remember I talked about how at the end of G1 and G2 there's checkpoints. Now, if the cell discovers damaged DNA, it's supposed to stop it from dividing. But in cancer, those checkpoints don't work properly. And the cell divides even though the DNA is damaged. And once that happens, they start replicating uncontrollably. They don't have that resting phase in between divisions. They just divide, 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 and keep passing that damaged DNA on. That's cancer. So we're including cancer in a unit on the cell cycle because it really is a disease of the cell cycle. So what you have up here is a normal cell, and this cell divides and makes two healthy cells. When this cell divides, one of the cells' DNA gets damaged while the other one stays healthy. Now normally your body says this DNA is damaged, this cell's not going to divide anymore, and it either causes it to go into G0 and not divide, or it actually kills the cell, one or the other. But in cancer, this damaged cell keeps dividing, and then it makes 2, and those 2 make 4, and those 4 make 8, and those 8 make 32, and it just keeps growing exponentially. And the growth isn't controlled, and these usually grow faster than normal cells do when they're cancers. So here's a tumor cell. And what they did was they took what are called nanospheres, and there's a poster of those on the wall. They took some nanospheres, put gold in them, and attached them to the tumor so that you're able to see it. Now, the normal thing associated with cancer is a tumor. There are 2 types of tumors: malignant tumors and benign tumors.
I'm a tumor, I'm a tumor. I'm a tumor, I'm a tumor, I'm a tumor. I'm a tumor, I'm a tumor, I'm a tumor. Oh, I'm a tumor.
Let's talk about benign tumors first. Benign tumors are not cancerous. They're not cancer yet. They are an overgrowth of cells. They're cells that have divided when they shouldn't. But a lot of times they don't have the damaged DNA, and even if they have the damaged DNA, they're not spreading to other cells. So benign tumors don't spread, and they're not usually life-threatening. They'd only be life-threatening if they were on like the heart or if they're pressing on a major organ. Now, malignant tumors are what you need to worry about. Malignant tumors are cancerous tumors. And the cells duplicate really, really fast. So here what you have is some cells with damaged DNA just starting to form. This is the beginning of a malignant tumor. Then as it gets bigger, what starts happening is it starts actually causing blood vessels to grow into it so that they can get more nourishment to make them grow even faster and faster. And once they start getting blood vessels into them, that's when cancer is a really big problem. So here you have the formation of a malignant tumor. This is a benign tumor. You know, it's, say this is your skin, it's on the surface, it's not really doing anything, it makes a little lump, but it's not affecting all the other cells around it. But when you look here at the malignant tumor, this is growing a lot faster. Here it starts pushing the other healthy cells out of the way, and here it started getting blood vessels in it. Once it gets the blood vessels, that's when doctors are really going to have to worry about it. So what we've been talking about with the blood vessels getting, the cancer getting blood vessels to it, that's called metastasis. Meta usually means big. So metastasis is when the cancer becomes big. It becomes a big problem and it really starts to spread. So metastasis is when cancer spreads from cancerous cells to healthy cells. So here you can see it down here in the corner, where here's the tumor and the cells have actually reached the blood vessels, and you can see cells here breaking off into the blood system. And what happens is then those travel through your circulatory system and land in other places in your body and start new tumors in new places. And that's why metastasis is a really big problem. Even once cancer spreads, it's always going to be named by where it starts. So if you begin with breast cancer, even though it spreads, no matter where it is in your body, it's still considered breast cancer. If you have lung cancer, even after it spreads, it's still lung cancer. So you always name it for wherever the original place it started was. Now, there's 3 ways to treat cancer or get rid of tumors. And we're going to discuss each one of them. And they're surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. So we'll start with surgery. Surgery has some benefits, but it also has some downfalls. Surgery's good if you have a tumor that hasn't started to spread yet. It's very direct. You go in and you cut it out. Now, the problem with surgery is you have to get every single cancerous cell. If you leave even one cancer cell behind, it doesn't work and the tumor just starts all over again and starts spreading. So you're cutting it out, but if there has been any kind of metastasis, if there's been any kind of spreading of the cancer, surgery is not going to be effective. So it doesn't disrupt the cell cycle. All it does is get rid of the cancerous cells. Radiation is another choice. Now with radiation, they actually shoot beams of energy through your body. And the idea behind this is that the radiation kills cancer cells by destroying their DNA. But the problem with that is when you destroy the cancer cell's DNA, you're also risking damage to the healthy cells. So this does disrupt the cell cycle. It stops the cell from dividing because it destroys the part of the DNA that lets it divide. But it's also going to make the person sick because it's going to kill some other cells in their body. And the third one, which is normally the first thing that doctors are going to try, is chemotherapy. Chemo kind of sounds like chemical or chemistry. So it's treatment using chemicals. This does disrupt the cell cycle. What chemotherapy does is it gives you drugs that stop the spindle from forming during mitosis. So anti-mitotic or stopping mitosis. So they prevent the spindle from forming so that cells don't divide. So without the spindle, the cells get stuck at the end of G2 or the beginning of mitosis and they can't divide. Now, what are some of the side effects to cancer treatment? Now, these are the side effects from radiation and chemotherapy. The goal of the treatment is really to destroy cancer cells before you destroy the normal cells. But there are some side effects like hair loss, fatigue, feeling tired, and nausea and vomiting. This happens because normal cells get killed at the same time as the cancer cells. Now, the goal is to kill the cancer before you kill so many normal cells that the person dies. So to review, cancer is caused when cells with damaged DNA replicate too often, so it's a disease of the cell cycle. Tumors that are caused by it can be either benign or malignant. When the cancer starts spreading, it's called metastasis. And the three main ways to remove cancer are surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you will appreciate some of your upperclassmen that made this PowerPoint for me, because I didn't make this one. They made this for extra credit. So this is an example of something you might be able to do as a project for enrichment points. And see you in class. Don't forget to write your podcast question.